Hello, lovers of the Facebook and the internet and whatever else happens online. Today is part 2 of our Christmas series where we're talking about Santa Claus, we're talking about reindeer, we're talking about elves, and the spirit of Christmas, and the origins of Christmas and its traditions, and why it's so wonderful, and why we should be believing in it and celebrating it and doing it in terms of our development as Christians, and understanding the narrative in itself. So now this is going to be the first video on Santa Claus. We might be going through several other videos on Santa Claus and talking about his character because he's actually pivotal to the understanding of Christmas. And I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, isn't it supposed to be about Jesus Christ? And in our last video, we talked about how Jesus Christ was the incarnate Son of God, and how Christmas is really about incarnation, this idea of God becoming flesh and dwelling among us. So what does Christmas have to do with Santa Claus, since Santa Claus was not around when Jesus was born? So the question resides, who is Santa Claus, and what does he have to do with Christmas? Now, there are many myths, legends, and stories that are designed for children that surround the person of Santa Claus. Other names for Santa Claus include Father Christmas. Perhaps his most true name is Saint Nicholas, who has basically become the saint for Christmas. Saint Nicholas is known as the Wonder Worker. He was a real person who existed. He existed somewhere in the year 270 to 343 about. And the thing about Saint Nicholas is that not a lot of people actually know about him, because a lot of the writings and historical records of who he was were lost. But one of the things that is well known and well believed in church tradition is that Saint Nicholas was a rich man who used his money to save people out of prostitution, out of slavery, out of debt by paying their debts for them. And this is why he was known as a wonder worker. Just think how awesome that is. A rich Christian man saving people through paying, you know, out prostitutes so they can go to school, things like this, and putting money, giving secret gifts to people to help them. How wonderful is that? And so Saint Nicholas is oftentimes associated with the traditions, mixed to the traditions of a lot of the other cultures, like the Dutch and various other places, to becomes this sort of mythical figure in um, Christmas folklore. And a lot of people say Santa Claus is really Satan, and that's only a half truth. Um, I'm not saying it's not true, but we're going to be talking a little bit about um, kind of these things regarding Santa Claus and who he is and what his purpose is for and how it connects to nativity. So bear with me. This whole process of explaining this can be really, really um, challenging, but I'll do my best to try and draw some connections. So starting off with the Catholic tradition or the Orthodox tradition, the idea of either praying to saints or venerating saints, which takes precedence in our scriptures, which talks about there being a grandstand in heaven, in heavenly places, of saints that are cheering us on, wanting us to live righteous lives. Saint Nicholas happens to be one of those people. Okay, so he's confirmed dead. I'm sorry to hear that. Say that Santa Claus is dead. Saint Nicholas is dead, but Santa Claus is alive. Okay, we could say that there is something about that, about the idea of the saints of Christmas, bringing Christmas, and how it connects with the theme of Christmas. Whatever, this video is going to be a little bit crazy. I know. I'm trying to do my best to explain this. So anyways, last video we talked about incarnation. And so incarnation is this idea that God becomes flesh. He becomes manifest in this world, this physical world around you. Everyone just like turn off their phones for 5 seconds, look outside, look around you, breathe in some air, take 5 deep breaths. This is the reality that God went into, and he actually did go into this world. This isn't just some made up fairy tale. We consider this to be a historical fact that Jesus Christ was a real person who existed and was born. Um, we believe him to be the Son of God, yet dressed as a human person. So the question is, how do we get to this truth? How do we get to this truth? It's not something that just comes naturally. It's something that we have to wrestle with, something that we dig with. And as we dig into it, we realize there are a lot of external things that we must do in order to reach that incarnation, to discover what the incarnation means. And this is the journey of Christmas. This is the pathway to Christmas, sort of the journey that we go on. Now, the thing about this is, um, Jesus is ultimately the the apple of the eye. He's the baby in the manger is the trophy. It's the reward. It's the holy grail of Christmas is Emmanuel, in the manger. And in order to sort of get to that point, we have to sort of dig through something that happens within ourselves called our passions. Okay, and so you have to understand that because Jesus is the goal, he cannot be the one who takes us to himself. Okay, no, this isn't how necessarily Christmas works. You see, remember that it wasn't Jesus who directed the shepherds and wise men to Jesus. It was the angels who directed Jesus, the shepherds and wise men to Jesus. So if you understand it like this, it's the wise men and the shepherds that direct the people to Jesus. You understand that this is sort of Santa Claus roles. Okay, so Santa, Saint Nicholas, is an angel. He's a messenger. Okay, and this is ultimately sort of where we get into the saint theology of the saints. Our saints, are sort of messengers that direct people to Jesus. Okay, that's as Christian as it's allowed to get before it becomes patron saint worshiping and stuff like that. We're not going to get into that. We don't worship Santa Claus. No, but Santa is, in a sense, the agent of God to send people towards that Christmas incarnation truth. And his agency is essentially to bring people into the incarnation. And he does this through giving gifts. He does this through the mystery of him giving gifts and setting a naughty list and setting a nice list, and this idea of him sort of giving us this microcosm of the judgment day. Now, the idea behind this is essentially, this story takes us back to a sort of pattern of reality. If you look at the nativity story itself, you see this huge event happening between believers who are sent by the angel to discover the newborn king, and the unbelievers, which would be like Herod and his army to kill all the firstborn. So remember that during the nativity, as Jesus being born, there's these events happening. There are people who are absolutely against the newborn child being born, and there are people who are for the newborn child being born. This is essentially Santa's naughty and nice list. Okay, this is the same pattern that we see with Santa Claus's naughty and nice list. You see, so the naughty people are essentially the King Herods, who are so filled with greed and selfishness that at the coming of the newborn king, they intercept and try and stop it from happening, which is like trying to stop Christmas from happening. And you see the shepherds, who are humble, childlike, living in humility, loving, gentle souls who care about one another and want to be good people, be friendly, faithful people, nice people, are the nice people list. And so this pattern between naughty and nice, so naughty people getting punishment, which is what the coal represents, getting a lump of coal for Christmas is the punishment. And it's like a symbol for the brimstone of hell. It's the punishment of the curse. It's the punishment of the garbage pile. Ultimately, it's a symbol that represents death and the punishments and sort of the wrath in the sense of it being a cold, easily combustible object. And then you get the nice people who receive a gift. And this pattern existed from the very beginning between Cain and Abel. So actually what happens is with this character of Santa Claus who has the naughty and nice list, this is not a new theme in Christianity, but it is a recurring theme that recurs throughout Christmas in a microcosm, in the sense where if you're a good child, you receive a presents from Santa. If you're a bad child, you receive coal. And so in a sense, Santa Claus is the agent of Christmas. His job is ultimately to teach children this principle of Judgment Day at an early age, so that they understand that this narrative between Cain and Abel through the physical, through gifts, through objects, because in a sense, people can't understand spiritual things. They need physical objects to help them to understand it. And so, as you can see, the gifts are the lessons of Christmas. You know, and so what ends up happening is this nice and naughty dynamic creates, in a sense, a decision that the person has to make, whether to conform to their own will, to be on the naughty list and sort of to ruin Christmas, and to actually engage in that self-Herod process to destroy all of other people's gifts, and to ultimately become Cain, to be a prophet killer, or to be like Abel, who is on the nice list, who wants to do good, who wants to receive gifts, who wants to experience that Christmas magic, that magic of the incarnation, which we talk about so much as the main theme of Christmas. So ultimately, that goes into who Santa Claus is in a sense he's sort of one of the judges of Christmas. And I understand that this Jesus talks about this when he talks about how judges work. Remember he says that to the Pharisees, he didn't say, I will judge you at the end of the age. He said, Moses will judge you at the end of the age. So it is the righteous people who ultimately God says that one day you will judge angels. So it's ultimately the saints who are the people in the judgment seats of these various places. And so that is where Saint Nicholas is for Christmas. He's ultimately the judge of Christmas, which is ultimately where you get the naughty and nice dynamic of why he gives goods to give children, and why it's actually viable. And so, in a sense, Santa sort of works for Jesus. He resembles a lot of who Jesus is, and he emulates it in a miniature version. So Santa Claus has agency, but the character of Santa Claus, you have to remember, he's also a two-faced sort of person. Remember that Santa Claus is not someone to mess around with. If you've ever heard the Christmas story, you better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. He knows when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. There's a dynamic to Santa Claus where he is full of judgment and wrath. Well, maybe not wrath, but he's full of joy, and he's full of this ability to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so what we see with the character of Santa Claus is the same thing as the cornerstone, in the sense that Santa is the cornerstone, that this stone that the builders rejected has become the corner, right? In the sense that if people reject Christmas, the spirit of Christmas, they don't receive any gifts. If they accept Santa Claus, then they receive gifts. In the same way, if people don't accept Christ, they don't receive his blessings. If they do accept Christ, they receive his blessing. So ultimately, like, our encouragement for this video is, should we be believing in Santa Claus? The answer is actually yes. We shouldn't be worshiping him. We shouldn't be leaning on him way too much, the character of him. But understand that he actually has agency that connects with God. And so, people will say, well, where in the Bible does it say that? Well, he's a saint. He was a real person. And we assume that just as God picked Moses to be a judge, so he chooses St. Nicholas to be a judge as well. and all of the myths that have been lost that surround his character, and all of the traditions that have sort of combined everything to sort of make him into sort of all kinds of crazy things, and who he is just increases his his conviction, we could say. So anyways, yes, there is Santa Claus for you, and Christian interpretation of Santa Claus. We might do another video where we go into depth in some of the stories of Santa Claus, and so sort of unpacking what these symbols mean, like the reindeer, the red suit, and the North Pole, things like this. But this was just kind of a basic summary of who Santa Claus is. So if you like this video, hope you'll be tuned for the next one. God bless you.